Bronx native Peter Brainin is a Grammy and Latin Grammy winning saxophonist, flutist, drummer, and composer. He's performed at major venues and festivals worldwide, also toured and recorded with legends like Mongo Santamaria and Arturo Ofarrill, contributing to Grammy-winning projects such as Cuba. The conversation continues. As a composer, his work has been featured on original recordings with Native Soul, and he's a sought-after educator. He's taught at New York University, the New School, and jazz at Lincoln Center. And we're looking forward to speaking with him today. So, Peter, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great to meet you, Abe. This is beautiful. I'm gonna put on my glasses so I can see you.
Okay, good. We were just actually talking right before we started recording. It's been a really devastating year in the music. We've lost a lot of legends, but in the most recent last month, we lost a really tremendous drummer, Anthony Pinciotti, who I know you were very close with and collaborated with. So, kind of talk to me about your relationship with him, where you met, what you liked about working with him. Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, wow, I almost never felt the loss of another human being as much as Anthony because it was so sudden. And he was such a beautiful person and a ridiculously talented, amazingly talented artist. Um, I met him many years ago. Got invited to play a session with him by my good friend Sean McGloin. He's a fantastic bass player who lives in Brooklyn. And that's decades ago. And we used to play together at the Grassroots in the East Village with Jeremy Stratton. But in the last few years, I had this steady gig at this really fantastic club in Harlem called Room 623.
Hmm.
So every Wednesday, unfortunately, they just closed. But I got to play with Anthony. I, almost a lot of Wednesdays. I did different projects there, and he just became such a close part of and such a support to me. We never had a rehearsal. He would come in and sight read all my music like perfectly. And he would always give me a ride home after the gig, and we hung out a lot. And then I started playing on a lot of his gigs at Smalls and other places. And he was my favorite drummer, and I just felt he really encouraged me so much to to write, and you know he was very generous guy. He played with everybody. He knew how to make everybody sound better, and no ego. He wasn't into playing solos. He was into I mean, he played amazing solos, but he was really focused on lifting the music, and he was just an incredible, almost too good to stay here forever. One of those kind of people. You just, you know. So we were gonna record, and unfortunately, we were gonna record some of my music. He would play some of my tunes on his gigs, which was really an honor. And he also connected me with a lot of incredible people like Gary Versace and people I hadn't played with before. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can say. Everybody in I've never seen so many tributes like on Facebook. Like everybody loved him so much.
Yeah,
Um,
I believe I
he
actually had a neck surgery in 2021, and I had to take a break from playing guitar for about 2 months. The first gig I did, he played drums on it after having neck surgery, and
yeah.
and I was not in like the right mind. I didn't want to go back to playing it, but you had to. But even though I was probably having an off night, he couldn't have been more kind and generous musically.
Yeah, he took care of everybody, you know. It's he was just pure love and you know, I wish we could have taken care of him better. But you know, that kind of person changes your life. And so you know, I'm working on music. I'm writing some music and I'm just inspired by all the energy I got from him. Hopefully that'll go someplace, you know.
Well, rest his soul, and then thank you for sharing your experience with him. Let's I'd like to learn a little bit about, and our audience too. We always kind of have to have something that draws us into jazz. So, what drew you in originally that kind of sparked your initial interest into learning the music?
Yeah, it happened very young. It was very unusual, actually. Although my father, I always heard Billie Holiday, Fat Swallow, Django Reinhardt, Benny Goodman. I heard those records when I was growing up. He was a jazz fan, but I think what it was that after Jimi Hendrix died and the Beatles broke up, and as a little kid, as a young kid, I was really into rock and R&B. And then all my heroes were kind of gone suddenly. And then I saw on Channel 13 on PBS, they showed that black and white film about Mingus, where he's getting evicted from his loft in the West Village. And that started my interest in jazz. Seeing that film, I got interested in Mingus, and I think it was partly because of his radical ideology. Me and all my little hippie friends were into, you know, like kind of left-wing uh, political movements, and and my family's kind of coming from that place too. So his outspokenness, his activism, clicked with me as an 11-year-old or whatever. And then the music, because his music was so funky, and you know, somebody said he was the first jazz musician to put country blues into the music. The
So at
real
11 years
and
old, you could tell he was kind of rambunctious, so to speak. Like you could sense that even at that early age.
yeah, well, you know, he's talking about it. And me and my friends were all into that whole power to the people and the Black Panthers and all my, you know, young friends from Manhattan and other parts of New York. That appealed to me, but also the music was so funky, you know, and the whole gospel and the soul element of his music.
Better get
And
hit
I
in your
started going to
soul.
see him. What's that?
Better get hit in your soul.
Better get in your soul. Yep. And uh, I used to go see him a lot. My dad would take me, and I got to meet him, I think when I was 12, uh, playing at the Five Spot, which was on St. Mark's, was then renamed the Two Saints. And there wasn't a lot of people there. And Mingus saw me, you know, this kid with long hair, and he invited me to come over and sit with him, and he bought me a Coke. And him and Sue, and he was really sweet. And I used to go see him a lot with George Adams and Don Pullen. And Roy Brooks was playing drums. Those Danny Richmond was, I think, doing a rock gig at that time. And they would play maybe like one or two songs each set. They'd play Fables of Faubus for like a half hour, and they would play this his song called Celia. They would play that a lot. But meeting him, and he was kind of my intro to jazz, really. And I got into jazz before any of my friends. It was kind of unusual. And I started going to check out other people too. My dad took me to see Monk at the Vanguard when I was like 13.
Whoa.
Yeah, I've seen more stuff than almost anybody my age that I know. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. I really fell in love with the music. Um, and seeing those people, I saw Rahsaan Roland Kirk. I saw some really, really heavy people.
Bill
I
Evans, I'm
saw,
sure, right?
what's that?
Did you see Bill Evans?
Yeah. But the first time I saw Bill Evans, I think I was 14. I went with some kids from other music students, young musicians from my high school. Our band director's wife took us to the Vanguard to see Bill. And it was too subtle for me. I was like, where are all the saxophone players? You know, I it, I wasn't ready for that kind of subtlety, I think, at that time. But I saw him again at the Vanguard a few years later with Philly Joe and I think Chuck Israels. And by that time, I was really into Bill, and I was listening to all his records.
Yeah, when you said when you were talking about the time period, I'm like, oh, I just knew in my mind you definitely saw Bill Evans, 100%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's one of my heroes. I study him a lot. I transcribe his changes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that a lot of people get exposed to this, whether listening to records or they have a friend. Like you actually went and saw these great shows when you're before you were even a teenager. Like not too many
Yeah.
people get into the music that way. Either a friend of a friend or the music was it. But that is such a unique way. And I'm sure that translated throughout your life, that early influence.
Yeah, I was buying records too, you know,
Mhm.
but I was going to hear music all the time, all through my teens and 20s, you know, all the time. And then I when I originally played drums. I was a drummer and I studied snare drum with Elaine Jones, who was timpanist in the American Symphony Orchestra. I think she was one of the first black women in a major orchestra, major symphony orchestra. And so I studied drums for 3 years. Um, I studied with her for like a year and a half, and I had a couple of other teachers, and I played in the marching band, the concert band, and the orchestra. I played in the percussion section. Um, but there was a great drummer. I was then living in Hastings, which is kind of a small town, Hastings on
Hastings on
Hudson.
Hudson, right?
And there was my good friend, my man Clint DeGannon, who was in my class. You might know him. He's a fantastic drummer. And he kind of had all the drum gigs sewn up because it was a small town. There wasn't a lot of rhythm sections, and that's not really the reason though. I really was listening to jazz records and going to concerts and clubs, and I kind of fell in love with the saxophone,
Yeah.
especially Train and Dexter and Lester Young. And so I switched to saxophone when I was around 15. And I forgot why I mentioned that when we were talking about. But
Well, that's jazz. We're just going with the flow.
yeah,
So I know that all of this influence has, translated into your music, but there's also another component of your music, which is the whole Latin side of things.
yeah. Oh, what I was gonna say, sorry, I'll get back to that. But when I was around 16 or 17, I got to study with Frank Foster,
Oh,
who lived in Scarsdale, and I lived
mhm.
in Hastings, which was not far away. So I used to go to all his gigs. And I used to go see him on Monday nights with the Loud Minority at Rashid Ali's club, Ali's Alley. So I was just trying to that was another real like intro, you know. He was I took maybe 8 or 10 lessons with him, but you know, I went to a lot of his gigs and he was kind of a mentor to me and he was an amazing just genius musician and composer. Um, the Latin thing, um, I had heard a lot of Latin music and not really studied it, but I have three step siblings who were Puerto Rican, who grew up in PR. Their mother's Puerto Rican, and their dad is my stepdad. So I had some awareness of like Ray Barretto and people like that and Mongo, but I just got a call in 1989 to do some gigs at the Blue Note to sub for my great friend and saxophone hero Bobby Franceschini, and he asked me to sub on Hilton Ruiz's band. You know, Hilton, the great Puerto Rican piano player from New York City. And I knew Hilton. I had seen Hilton play with Rahsaan, so I knew all about him. You know, I mean, we all did, but you know, I was a big fan of Rahsaan Roland Kirk, so I knew all about Hilton. And Bobby was really busy playing with Willie Colon, and so Hilton offered me the gig ultimately, and I played with him for 10 years. Um, but one of the really magical things about that was that when I joined his band, the rhythm section was Andy Gonzalez, Jerry Gonzalez, and Steve Barrios. So my first experience playing Latin music was with the absolute like giants, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
innovators, you know. And then I became really close with Steve, especially. He, you know, also like playing drums. I immediately got really interested in, you know, like what's that music about? And, you know, and also as a drummer, and he showed me some basic stuff, and then it was like, yeah, that's the pattern, but that's not how it goes, you know, and got me to really listen to the right stuff. And I became also really close with Andy. I played on Steve Barrios's first record with Larry Willis and Joe Ford and Steve taught me pretty much Steve and Andy taught me basically everything I know about Latin music, but just getting to play with them so much, you know. And then I had a steady gig at Fat Cat for 15 years. They actually, my friend Jeff Vidal was booking the club, and he said, "Do you want to do a Latin jazz gig here once a month?" He just called me, and that turned into 15 years. So Steve and Andy were, whenever they were available, would do that gig with me. And I started writing a lot of music. I developed a whole book of original tunes and arrangements, inspired by them, inspired by the Fort Apache band, by their you know.
I
Also, I
saw
got to
that
play a
band
lot with.
play at Fat Cat.
You saw Fort Apache?
Your band.
My band. Oh, okay. Do you remember who was there at the time?
No. This is
Yeah.
going back. This is in like gotta be more than 10 years ago,
Yeah. Because now it's Cellar Dog and they won't give me a gig for some reason. But I mean, it's completely different owner, a different. But when it was Fat Cat, yeah, we played there for 15 years, and it was great because you know, just to really get to try things. I have a lot of recordings from there. Yeah, it was Steve Barrios and Andy Gonzalez and Luis Perdomo played piano, or Misha Tsiganov. And eventually Andy couldn't make it down the stairs. You know, he had health problems, and Steve passed away. Um, like right before my kids were born. I guess it's like 11 years ago. You know, really sad. But
When you
yeah.
were learning the Latin music, I mean, there's so many different types of rhythms that are going on the percussion. Like it's its own, it's its own language. Um, Do you think that had you not been a drummer, and because it's, there's so much of that stuff translate to the drums, do you think have you had you not been a drummer, it wouldn't have come as natural as it would have?
Maybe. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because you think about like, 3/2 and Sano Montu. Oh, I don't have to start listing Bolero. I don't want to start. You could just keep listing these different grooves, but it's so drum and rhythm oriented, and maybe that could have something to do with it.
Yeah, and also I practiced a lot of those rhythms on the drum kit,
Right.
and I play Steve helped me a lot with that. Like I play small percussion. I play claves, maracas, guiro, cowbell in different bands. With Bobby Sanabria, I really had a chance. He encourages me to play all the percussion. He even he even like threw me out there and had me take some solos on his gigs, like on timbal or and I'm studying congas now a little bit. Um so playing actually just playing clave is quite a responsibility. I
Mhm.
mean, it's got to be right, you know? And a lot of stuff going on around you. It has, so playing percussion, I really think it's helped me a lot. And I think it's helped me to understand my place in the music, you know? Like I'll say that playing with two drummers is more fun than playing with one.
Well, that's actually a really good point because now that and this is the first time I've actually really thought about it because you have to open your mind to the possibilities when you improvise. Um, and just learning another instrument, even if it's at its basic level, just kind of gets you out of being locked into the way you think on your own instrument. Or just being able to translate music to another instrument that's your secondary instrument, I think can be very important.
Yeah, and I think playing patterns, playing something that's, you know, like it's got to be simple and it's got to support everything. And when I'm playing in a Latin jazz group, you don't have to play a lot. You can interact with the drummers. You can try to complement them.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you can play a few notes and it can have a lot of impact if they're placed and if it's in clave or it's, also a lot of jazz horn players don't learn any Latin licks. They don't learn the melodic language and they don't really, I mean, we're so busy trying to learn so much other stuff.
Do you know Oscar Stagnaro?
Yeah, the bass player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've worked with him.
Yeah, he was my teacher when I was maybe 19, 20 years old.
Ah,
So he was very, he was great and I figured you had worked with him.
yeah, he used to play a lot with Paquito, right?
Yeah, yeah, he's in his band. Yeah.
He's Peruvian, maybe. Is he Peruvian?
Uh
Oscar?
I'm forgetting.
Yeah, I might be wrong. He's a great player. Yeah. It's been a long time. I can't remember who we played with, but we worked together.
He's the
Yeah.
bass player for that music, man, you know. He's
Oh yeah, he's
tremendous.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah. Andy's not here now, but Ruben Rodriguez is really incredible bassist. He's a really good friend. He's he mostly plays bass guitar, but he's, you know, on Ampeg and he has Bobby Rodriguez's bass.
Oh
He's
wow.
like Bobby's protege. Ruben is unbelievable, man. And I just played with him. We played a tribute Monday to Johnny Rodriguez at St. Peter's with the
And
Mambo
it's such a shame
Legends.
too that club room 623 that like I was supposed to play there right the week of the pandemic started.
Oh man.
Like it was I think March 20th or so 2020 I was supposed to play there with my trio and
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, it's really, you know, everything that happened there is all thanks to one person, and that's Marcus Goldhaber, who I hope he can hear me. Oh no, we moved upstairs. He's down there. He lives in my building,
Oh, really?
or I live in his building. He told us about this building. We moved here because of him.
Oh, wow.
He's a great singer, and he created that place. He
Nice.
found it. He just went there and said, convinced the owner to. She had this empty room. You know, she owned the restaurant upstairs, and he convinced her to turn it into a jazz club.
Yeah.
And it was complete tireless. He worked tirelessly. And but ultimately she basically wanted to retire or she never really, I think, was that passionate about having a club.
Yeah.
And the club was doing really well, but the owner was just like, maybe it wasn't a lot of profit for her, and so
No,
it's
it's well.
unfortunate.
No, well, I want to thank you so much for doing the podcast. It's been great to hear your story and get to know you a little better. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Abe. Um, can I mention that I'm playing at Smalls?
Please.
Is it too late? Are
No.
we done? Um, the 31st, and we're really going to be paying tribute to Anthony. I mean, he's kind of the reason he was supposed to be on the gig, and he's kind of the reason that I've been playing there a lot. And um, I'm playing the January 31st and February 1st
Friday and Saturday
with,
night.
yeah, I'm doing the weekend, 9 o'clock and 10:30 sets with Dave Kokoski, Jay Anderson, and I think Jimmy McBride is playing the first night, and Rudy Royston is playing the second night. So it's pretty amazing,
Go check it out. It's
lineup.
Smalls, January 31st and February 1st.
Yeah, and we're gonna play a bunch of my music. And anyway, thanks so much for having me, man. Let's get on the phone and talk some more.
Definitely.
I want to hear more.